we're here at Slush Music, and a lot of what we're talking about is going to be music tech. But really, one of the things that every startup that I'm speaking to, every member of Music Tech UK, Music Tech Europe, across the globe, everyone wants to ask that question about what does it actually take to make a company investable. So Arturo and the team have pulled together this incredible rockstar panel of people who are doing it day in, day out to give you the secrets of what they actually want. So I'm going to ask the panel to very briefly introduce themselves, who they are, where they're from, and then I'm going to ask the questions that we've been asked the most on behalf of those who are looking for investment. Andrew.
Yeah, hey, thanks for coming, everybody. I'm Andrew Kahn. I'm the managing partner of the Yamaha Music Innovation Fund, early stage fund investing in stage companies, $1 to $2 million first checks, focused on creative industries, technology.
Hi, I'm Christina from Best Nights VC. I was always fascinated what made people care about something, so community, a brand, or a song. And this question is still at the heart of what I do right now. So at Best Nights VC, we invest into the bridge between culture and tech. So everything around community, nightlife, and consumer experiences. So music is at the heart of what we do, and yes.
My name is Jakob Wredstrøm. I run Amplitude Ventures. We're a venture studio, so we build companies. And we have a fairly big focus in music tech. We think it's an interesting industry. So we build companies and co-invest small tickets.
Great, thank you. Andrew, now, there are a lot of companies in the music tech world that are B2B, but you specifically back consumer creator products. So in music, what makes for you a company that's clearly investable today?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
The shorter answer, and then people can come to you afterwards for the longer one.
Fair enough. Look, I think there are universal things that every investor looks for in an investable company. It starts with the founder market fit, which is generally a qualification of somebody's willingness to stick out what is often a very difficult journey. So it's evaluating founder market fit. It's evaluating the addressable market of the product. You know, is this serving a very, very niche audience today that could grow into something very big, and is that believable? I think we look for, of course, signs of product market fit in the early stages. You know, and you can't fake metrics. So, you know, strong user retention, viral growth metrics. I think those are all very, very important. And I think the last and maybe most interesting piece are really the unfair advantages, particularly in go-to-market. So is this a company that we're seeing, you know, viral growth loops, that they've built those in, that they understand how to acquire customers cheaply, and that they've got, you know, an audience doing the work for them, that their users are vibrant and sticky and retentive and excited to tell people about it. So I'd say those are some of the kind of key criteria that we look for.
Love it, thank you. Now, Christina, you talked about looking for culture-led consumer music tech. So what are the proof points that you look for that makes you believe that there'll be long-term growth and it isn't just a kind of a fad or a viral spark?
I think for us at Best Nights VC, what we focus on is really understanding the founding team and being sure that they know what cultural relevance means and coolness, and being able to translate that into a business model that scales. What that means is we want to see initial traction that goes beyond the hype. So really differentiating from the initial hype to a business that is wanted and needed by the consumers. So seeing a product where users exactly not only want that, but need it and always come back. And as Andrew said, the strong retention that we see is something that makes it really investable for us. Then introducing revenue streams on top of that, diversifying that, and not only telling how it could be monetized, but also doing that is something that we look for. And yes, these are the most two important points. Everything goes back to understanding our cultural relevance and also understanding what strategic fit means for us at Bass Nights VC and Jägermeister.
Thank you. Now, Jakob, not least because we did the music tech pitch jury, but your job is looking at decks all the day, looking for decks, looking for data, looking for signals. What are the red flags in a deck that make you pass on a deal? Because there's lots of people about what's in the, but what's the thing that would turn you off as an investor?
People claiming they can actually change stuff, I think, is the biggest red flag. I think in music, I think it's evolution and not disruption. So I think if anyone claims that I will change stuff, I will beat the status quo, it's an immediate turnoff.
Okay, because that's really important, because some people say that they want to have this crazy total addressable market, or they're going to reinvent music, or they're going to change a new behavior. That for you is a red flag, right?
Well, if they didn't have an incredible career before this and they have a track record to point to and, you know, financing already that points that direction, then yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Great, thank you for that. So Andrew, let's talk about those creator tools and consumer tools. So if a tool starts with musicians or instruments in that world, what shows that it can go beyond those prosumers and the musicians class? How does it scale to be something that all consumers who love music want?
There might be two questions in there. Well, I'm going to give the universal answer, which is that your users will tell you that they want this product to scale beyond music. So I don't know. I'm a believer that, like, if your product's working, your users are going to dictate your roadmap. You're going to come to me and when we first meet, and I'm going to ask you what that roadmap looks like, and hopefully you're going to say, we have all these new types of users that are demanding these types of features. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my answer. Your users will tell you.
There's some great stuff here, everyone. You should be writing this down. Christina, so when you're looking, you've talked about the sort of the qualitative issues, but let's talk about the numbers. You know, what are the numbers that you're looking for companies that you want to invest in? Is it users? Is it growth? Is it revenue? What are the numbers that most excite you as an investor?
I have a very disappointing answer for that. Well, I think for the cultural world, it's not easy to put a framework, especially for what we invest in. So in the music tech, more related to not creator tools or B2B artist tools, but more immersive experiences or fan engagement. You cannot take the B2B SaaS framework and say that is the revenue we want to see. These are the pilot project customers numbers. This is a different framework. A whole different framework. As already mentioned, like the cultural relevance, how can you measure that? You have to have intuition and a feeling for that. We try to have that at Bass Nights VC. Can I promise it? No. And at pre-seed stages, there might not be any convincing numbers. And this is why it's disappointing. We don't have like any prerequisites, like a 1 million ARR or anything that we need to invest in, but we want to see exactly this user retention, I guess. And I think user retention, even if it's a small cohort where you can see the super users are coming back and it's a needed product, it is better than rapid growth at a pre-seed level.
So it's a bit more like a sort of authenticity fit rather than a sort of a number of traction, right?
Yes and no, of course. If you have no revenue, it's difficult also to measure that.
Well, you can afford to be choosy, so that's important to know.
It is very case specific, so it shouldn't be this encouraging to not have like a specific framework or prerequisites for us to invest in. And the answer of like, or like the question of like, what kind of traction do I need? When should I come back? It's so hard to answer because at some point you find the product and you have a growth spike of millions and millions of users. You could have come back before that. So, hard question, difficult answer.
And by the way, I'm coming to you with the questions that I'm asked all the time, so they are all rhetorical. So on that point, Jakob, startups always seem to obsess about their minimum viable product, their MVP. what is the MVP? What is the smallest thing that a music tech company needs to show you that's going to make you think that they've actually got something that people want?
Yeah, there's a few different ways to answer that question. I'll set the scene by saying that one of the purposes of an MVP is to get more finances to build a more advanced product. And oftentimes, the void you need to cross there is communicating your worth to investors who don't understand music, because, let's be honest, even though I am sitting with music tech investors, they don't exist at scale. So you need to prove that your business has interests. And I think not so much on technology, especially with AI now and sort of assisting developers, things are getting cheaper. I don't think you need to prove as much that you can create a technology to do something rather than there's actually a business case for this and there's business willingness. So the answer to that is somewhat of a technology, just showcasing slightly that you're capable of doing something, and then just clear business indicators that this has a relevance. That is by far it, and outweighs technology by far.
Great, thank you. Now, we are legally required to talk about AI now, I'm afraid, Andrew. But for music apps and Gen AI tools, how do you tell the difference between long-term stickiness and short-term hype? You talked about people coming and using it over and over again, but how do you differentiate between the signal and the noise of a repeatable, growing behavior or a spike, which you see inevitably in some of these Gen AI apps and products?
I think you just answered it, which is the answer's in the question, which is, I think fundamentally, the metrics will tell you, if it's an AI wrapper, which is an annoying term probably at this point, you're going to know that if you've got 90 days of kind of user history. You're going to see the spike, and you're going to see that, that retention doesn't, in fact, the curve doesn't level off, but drops off, and to a point where you have to turn over your customer base 7 times a year, and that's not a business, right? So that's the signal to me, which is just looking at the math. I think, the other thing, again, this goes back to something that Christina said, and it's founder market fit. Is this somebody who's building for hype, or is this somebody who's building a painkiller because they can't live without solving this problem? And I think, especially in the early stages, that is probably the first thing we really try to dig into and understand is the story behind the company, why they're doing this. And then hopefully, we have at least a minimum viable product that we can see and experience, that they're capable builders, and finally, that we would have some traction, some history to know whether or not this is a retentive product. So it's all those things. Are you building for the right reasons? Or at least, do we believe you're building for the right reasons in a way that, you're not going to go on to the next product when, user retention doesn't work out? And do you have it?
Can I supplement to that?
Please.
So really what you're saying, but the way that I try to distill it is it a pursuit of an opportunity, or is it solving of a problem that's been there for a while? And I think that's just a really easy distillation. Chasing an opportunity when things are changing that fast, most likely that's going to be a fad.
Thank you. Now, Christina, here we are. We're at the heart of Europe. Most of these companies, of course, want to be able to cross over to the US or go global. What's a common mistake that European tech founders make when they try to scale to the US?
Don't ask the American.
That's why I'm asking the non-American.
Good question.
We might come to the American on that point.
Yeah, might be a good idea. I mean, I think for most companies in Europe, scaling in the European market is already so hard because it's so fragmented, and to go from, from Finland to Germany is a step that is just insane. If you build for the US, you have a huge market, and you have to consider all these factors of how many people you really target all of a sudden. I think it's a good step to expand to the US, as you don't have to go through all these fragmented processes of targeting all the EU countries. But the most common mistake we see is not having the resources and capabilities to expand to such a mass market. And this goes back to funding, this goes back to knowledge, this goes back to in-house resources and people, and the know-how of the market.
Thank you. Andrew, as the American on the panel, any thoughts or additions to that? I mean, the classic mistake we make is that the US is a country rather than a continent. You know, that's one of the things I observe. But any others that you would add to what Christina said?
God, no. I mean, yeah, I never really thought about how fragmented Europe is. Yeah. God, a lot of language barriers, and although, you know, the EU is pretty strong, there's a lot of cultural differences in markets. I mean, look,
we wouldn't know. I'm in the UK, so anyway.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, that was a good thing while you had it going. I don't have the advice, although you would hope that the product, you know, built in a way that can scale anywhere, that it takes you to the US, right? If you're first selling here, and again, this depends on what you're selling. If you're selling a ticketing software, your approach to the US is going to be dramatically different. Don't do it. It's just such a dramatic, like there are just entrenched differences in certain industries that won't work. But if you are, you know, making I don't know, an app for learning music, that's a very basic idea, but like that's universal, right? You maybe have to translate languages, but you know, you would hope that the US would pull you in, that you would see those users and you'd respond to that, and then, you know, build your team accordingly. So, that's not an answer, but...
No, it's great. So, Jakob, at Amplitude, you work with a lot of founders. You essentially grow and accelerate lots of them as well. After 90 days of focused work, what are you looking for from a music tech company after that 90 days to be able to show to investors and the world after that? What are the key proof points of success?
I think, again, back to the chasm of funding, I think 90 days of focused work, you need to be able to communicate regardless of music. That's one of the most important things. Like, yes, you work in the music industry, but it's just a tech product, like a tech product that happens to be in the niche of music. So having the ability to zoom out and really forget about music and just know that that's your particular niche, like that's the one thing. The second thing is like what I at least prefer to see. There might be a lot of difference of opinion here, but I speak from like a very early stage realism thing. Is there an element of almost service-like offering you can make in the early stages of a product? Like something you haven't scaled technology-wise, but you know someone could pay you money to do? All of these things speaks into the viability of the model and the viability of getting financing. The realism, especially in Europe, you won't get a lot of financing. Like so there needs to be a pretty clear path to creating revenue yourself.
And maybe to adding that, I love the point of like talking to different investors and being ready not only to talk to music tech investors, because we see that as well. A friend, an investor always says, a music tech company can be named music tech for us because we understand it. For other investors, it might be a B2B SaaS company because it targets artists. And it's a whole nother story to sell it that way. Might not be interesting for us, but for them, it's like, B2B SaaS company, perfect for us. So things to consider speaking to different investors.
Yeah, and when I look over cases, I see a lot of cases for companies that has raised some capital. I almost never see any people from the music industry on that cap table. Like, I can't give you an exact number, but, 80 to 85% investors I see in companies are not from music tech, so I don't even know why we're pursuing that direction. Like, it doesn't make it doesn't make much sense.
Great, thank you. Now, rather implausibly, we're coming towards the end of our panel, so I'm going to reach out to you, and again, this is for the audience, not me. If there is one rule that startups in the audience should be thinking about, I'd like to know about it. So, Andrew, what's the one rule? If I'm selling a consumer-facing piece of music tech, what's the one rule, one piece of advice you would give? Be as generic as you like.
I'm qualified to be generic. Clearly, my one piece of advice for somebody building in consumer, focused on music: Boy, it's to focus on the biggest markets. You know, and I don't know exactly what those are, but like to me, that's creation or consumption. I think this is my piece of advice, and this is not to deter anybody from doing it, but I very much prefer bottoms-up products. So bottom-up products starts with users before going, and hopefully that, builds its momentum such that artists, leading artists, come to the product. When people start at the top, it is much, much harder to get the people on the bottom. You think they're gonna pull them in, but what you end up doing is you end up building for their requirements, which is actually not what the mass market wants. And so I guess my one piece of advice is focus on the everyday user. In music, don't focus on getting Sia or Lorde or Billie Eilish.
It's great, thank you. Christina, what's the one rule or one piece of advice for turning culture into steady economics?
I loved what Andrew said about the over-reliance on one artist, what we see a lot. The over-reliance on one artist, one niche. I love it. I like it also as well, to focus on the niche and not start mainstream. But we need to see the potential for you to go mainstream. Not a nice thing to say, but out of the view of an investor, this is the thing to do. And the more generic advice for every founder to speak to investors: don't ask for funding, ask for advice, and then you'll get funding.
Oh, you should write that down, everyone. That's great. And Jakob, one rule or one piece of advice for turning an idea into something in traction in 90 days?
So into traction, I think this is both with partners, with users, with investors, and that's a rule about communication, because that's where a lot of the first problems come, and you never go beyond that. It's going to be a bit boring because I just mentioned on it, but I have one rule that I say to founders all the time, and that is, in your communication, say music once, not more. Once, don't speak about music more.
Brilliant. Fantastic piece of advice. Great, great people. And as you said, if you bump into them later, don't ask for money, ask for advice. So to Andrew, to Christine, and to Jakob, thank you very much.